My sister and I have never been close, other than the huge age gap. My parents have always treated us differently. Before she was born, Dad lost his job and we had to rent out our house and move into a small place. We had to change a lot of things because we didn't have much to work with. Dad was really trying to find a new job, but it was getting harder and harder. So both Mom and Dad began applying everywhere they could. Then out of nowhere, Mom got a call from someone she used to work with. He said he was starting something new and wanted people he could trust to join his team. At that time, the pay wasn't much, but it was certainly more than what we had going. Mom immediately accepted. 6 months had passed and Dad was finally hired. We were doing better, but we had to pay off quite a few people because my parents had borrowed money while we were still at the house. 3 months after Dad lost his job, we moved out and rented it. They understood that it would be a while before everything went back to how it used to be, so we made the choice to keep renting the house. About a year later, Mom found out she was going to have a baby. Although things had calmed down, they thought it would be wise to use the rent money to help with the costs for Mom and the new baby. We ended up moving to a slightly larger apartment. My parents had learned the importance of money by then, so they were really cautious with how they spent it. In all this time that had passed, my communication with my parents had turned to hi, good morning and bye. They were so worried about money that it was all they talked about. The first time we shifted, I used to wait for them to come back. First, it was only Dad who came back late. Then it was Mom. When they were back home, they were so tired that they wouldn't even glance at me. If I tried talking to them or going in for a hug, they would get irritated and take me off. I understood that my parents were stressed, but I think they could at least afford to smile at me. A small one would have done too. I basically bathed myself, did the laundry by hand, made sandwiches when I was hungry, and walked myself to school. I tried to be as independent as I could. They, on the other hand, hadn't even noticed I was trying my best to help them out. After we shifted a second time, all focus was on Mom. Since she was pregnant, he tried to keep her as comfortable as he could. Mom didn't stop working, but she didn't work as late. I was excited about the news of Mom's pregnancy. I thought having another sibling would be great for company. I tried to express my happiness, but Mom seemed easily annoyed. Every time I tried to talk to her, she'd just tell me to leave her alone. Dad was busy working throughout the day, often coming home later than Mom. But whenever he did, he'd always bring something for either Mom or the baby. He would just ignore me saying he was tired. I was basically a stranger in my own home. I used to cry myself to sleep even if they heard me. They would ignore me and shut their door. 3 months after my dad lost his job, I was shifted to a public school. They had enrolled me back in my previous one, and after Mom became pregnant, I knew they weren't going to. I wanted to go back to my old school and friends. I wanted to meet them. It was so lonely at home in that school. Nobody really spoke to me. I just wanted to talk to someone. As Mom's bump got bigger and bigger, they wouldn't even acknowledge my presence. It was as if I wasn't even there. I was sad and hurt. They didn't pay attention to what I had to say, so I felt helpless. Mom was nearing the end of her pregnancy, just days away from having the baby. We didn't have any family nearby, at least not that I knew of. I ended up staying home alone for days while Mom was in the hospital. Even though I was alone, I didn't say anything about it. I just wanted her to be okay. And I wanted to see the baby. After they came home, they were busy. The baby was always in either of their arms. I asked if I could see her, and Dad let me into their room. Mom was breastfeeding her and got agitated. She told me to get out. Dad didn't say anything. I didn't get to spend time with my sister or hold her. Mom was very protective of her dad. At least tried a couple of times to let me be near her. But Mom didn't let it happen. It was as if she hated me, and I didn't understand why. I could clearly see that she loved my sister. A few months after Mom was able to recover, my parents decided to move into the house we owned. I thought maybe when we moved back, things would get better, but it wasn't the case. As time passed, their behavior towards me only worsened. One day, I couldn't hold it in anymore and had a breakdown in front of them while they were in the hallway. I accidentally woke up my sister, and seeing me upset made her cry. Now everyone was angry with me and I couldn't stop crying. Dad dragged me back up and locked me in my room, telling me to shut up. I fell asleep crying. They didn't want me, and I realized that though they owned a house, it wasn't very big. It had only 2 bedrooms, so they put me in the attic to make room for my sister. I had to clean the attic myself. It was horrible. Up, down, so cold. On top of that, it was the darkest place ever. I hated it. There was no wiring in there, so there was no possible AC of light. I would go up there, and when my parents had gone to bed, I would go back down and sleep on the couch. They had caught me a few times, but didn't really care, as long as I was out of their way. As I got older, I found a job, but I didn't tell them about it. When I received my first paycheck, I had this urge to buy something for them, hoping it might make them like me more. However, I realized it might not solve anything, so I decided against it and just kept the money. I didn't even buy anything for myself. But as time passed, it was soon approaching the moment for university, and I found myself with little money saved up. It wasn't enough to cover the university fees, food, and living costs. I tried bringing it up, but they clearly declined, saying they didn't have much. They were even surprised I had brought up university. All that focus was on my sister, and I didn't blame her for that. Even growing up, she wasn't rude to me. We didn't talk, and I didn't hold a grudge either. It felt like a lost cause. My parents never really encouraged a bond between us. Even when my sister would try to connect with me or I'd reach out to her, it always ended in drama. I couldn't handle the tension that followed, so I kept my distance. They behaved as if I would somehow cause harm to her. I had to endure it, though, and just keep my feelings to myself. My only chance of going to university was if I got sponsored by a full scholarship. I was a smart kid. I was hoping I would get it. I used to go to my neighbor's house and use his laptop. He was new to the area and had a daughter. She was a year younger than me. I applied for a whole lot of scholarships. I managed to get into a good university, but I couldn't get a full scholarship. I had to cover my own living and food costs. The university was 2 states away, but I knew I could get there. I managed to get in contact with a cafe owner and ask for work. She was an older lady and was very sweet. It turned out she had been there for a while before I even arrived. When I left, my parents didn't seem to notice or care. If I hadn't told them, they might not have even realized I was gone. I didn't have a plan for where to live since everything was so costly and required a down payment. When I arrived, I approached the owner of a cafe, an elderly lady, and asked if I could stay there temporarily while I figured out a more permanent place to live. She took pity on me and told me there was a room upstairs where she stayed and I could stay with her, but she would cut it off my paycheck. I was honestly just happy I didn't have to sleep on the streets. I had very little cash left, and I didn't want to spend it on a motel. While there, I took on a few more jobs in my free time. The old lady was clearly worried about me, which surprised me. I hadn't seen that expression directed at me in so long. Slowly, I settled down. I got through university and managed to land a position through pre-placements. That was probably the first time I bought myself remotely expensive clothes. It was for the interview. My worn-out hoodie wouldn't do. Once I received my offer letter, the first person I shared the news with was the cafe owner. She had been there for me when I needed support that my parents couldn't provide. I'll always appreciate her for that. She celebrated with me, hugging and kissing me, expressing how proud she was. That day, I couldn't hold back my tears. She had become like family to me, and I had a deep love and appreciation for her. She helped me move after I graduated. I needed to find a place closer to my job, and she came with me to help me decide. Even after I got settled there, I went down at least once or twice a month to visit her. We spoke regularly. I had tried to keep in contact with my parents, but they never answered my calls, not even once. Sometimes my sister would pick up, but it would be an awkward conversation. I eventually stopped calling them. While working there, I made friends. I was an introverted person, but they made an effort to talk to me. They would invite me when they would go out. I would usually decline, but sometimes they would convince me to go. Roughly a year later, the company offered free tickets for a small getaway. Each employee could bring one person. I made the choice to use my saved vacation days, I hadn't used any before, and invited the only person I considered family, the woman from the cafe. I affectionately called her Auntie, since she wasn't quite old enough to be a grandma. She suggested I bring someone else, but I was adamant that she should come with me. All my friends were at the company, and they all had trip tickets. They had asked me who I was bringing along and wanted to meet her, so we planned to go on vacation together. Funnily enough, she was an extrovert and got along well with them. I was still a shy person, and they would drag me around wherever they went on that trip itself. A guy approached me. My auntie was squealing when that happened and made me go with him. He was visiting here too. I have to give her credit. The man I met there is now my husband. He lived about half an hour from where I worked. When we got back from the trip, he called me up and asked me out. He was incredibly patient. Our relationship started with 2 months of dating, then blossomed into a 3-year commitment before we tied the knot, and we've been happily married for 4 years now. When it came time for our wedding, I extended invitations to my parents and sister, but none of them showed up. My then fiancé, who knew about my difficult family history, was deeply upset by their absence. In fact, he was so upset that he didn't even want to invite them in the first place. A year or two later, my sister got married. I was not invited. That's okay. I saw a few pictures online and congratulated her. It was a lavish wedding. She was around 22 or 23, so I knew she couldn't afford it. Our parents had to have paid for it. I didn't mind. I had moved on and was happy with my life. I was pregnant with our first child and my husband was elated. He was so excited. His parents had become my parents, and my aunt visited frequently too. Sometimes all of them would stay with us during my pregnancy. Suddenly one day, my aunt received a letter in my name. I was surprised by who it was. It was my parents. So, she offered to deliver the letter to me if I wished. I thought perhaps they had learned about my pregnancy and were trying to reconnect. It brought a flicker of happiness during my university days. I updated them about my current address and contact information, as everything had changed since our last communication. I was already 5 months into my pregnancy when I had this conversation, and I discussed it with my husband. He was very hesitant about that letter. He tried to explain his perspective to me, and it made sense. They hadn't reached out to me for years, and now they've popped up out of nowhere. I guess I was a little more than happy that they had reached out. It blinded me for a moment. He asked me if he could read the letter first, just in case there were some inappropriate things in there. I didn't really mind waiting. My husband was incredibly cautious about everything, especially because I was pregnant. After a couple of days, my aunt arrived with the letter, and it definitely wasn't what I had anticipated. When my husband read it, his expression twisted into one of disgust. I had never seen him so furious with anyone before. He handed the letter to my aunt and then just came over and hugged me tightly. I asked him what was written, and he just looked at me with so much sadness and hugged me again. He told me that I shouldn't read it and that it was disgusting. I wanted to get it over with, so I just held his hand and asked my aunt to read it aloud. My parents had lost their own house. They were kicked out because of their dear daughter. Before I had left, I knew that they had put the house in her name to fund her lavish wedding with her now divorced husband. She had mortgaged the house. My parents knew about it, and they had put in their own money too. Now they're asking me to pay them back the money I supposedly owe them for taking care of me for so many years. That news hit me like a wave. My sister's ex-husband refused to cover the mortgage, and she couldn't manage it either. I sat there trying to process it all, with a blank expression. My husband's arms stayed around me, comforting me with gentle rubs on my back. But inside, it was just an overwhelming disappointment. That night, I went to bed in tears, feeling a heavy weight of sadness. I couldn't help but feel guilty about it all. I didn't want my unborn baby to be affected by the selfish actions of my parents, but they were going to get payback. I wasn't going to be nice about it. I was happy, and I wanted to continue to be happy. I wasn't going to let them come in and have their way. They did get a response, but from my lawyer, it was a warning that if they sent me any more letters and tried to contact me again, they would be sued for harassment. They also got another letter attached from my lawyer informing them of child neglect. I made sure to let them know that I didn't owe them anything. From the clothes that I wore to the food that I ate, to the house that I owned, it was all me. Sure, after I got married, that was both me and my husband's hard work and efforts. Before all this, I worked my way through school and college entirely on my own. I hustled hard, and my efforts paid off. I landed a job and even got promoted, solely because of the sheer hard work I put in. But through all of that, they weren't there. They didn't support me financially or emotionally for any of it. And those scraps I made sandwiches from, or the leftovers I barely managed to eat, those definitely didn't count as the care or sustenance I needed. So I owe them nothing. I also told them that they contacted the wrong child. The child, the old them, was there. Their daughter, who mortgaged the house they put in her name. Since they've dug the hole they're in, they can climb out of it by themselves. Update 1. 2 months later, I'm close to my delivery date now. I thought I would update you on my current situation. This will be the last update. My parents haven't contacted me. From what I know, my sister gave the house to the bank. I don't know if they owe anyone anymore, but they are back to where they started. AAOP went through too much shit. Did they seriously have the guts to ask for money that their little princess lost? Bad things happen to bad people, AJ. I hope you have a safe delivery. Next story. I'm still fuming over this, so forgive me if this post isn't perfectly put together. I just need some third-party insight. Hi, 26 female, have a 28-year-old sister. Let's call her JJ, is a mother to 3 kids aged 4, 7, and 8 years old. The father is a really absent parent and not around much. He works the night shift and then sleeps all day. I feel bad for her because it definitely isn't a fair situation, and she doesn't get any time to herself. Anyway, the situation is this. My sister invited me to hang out on Saturday night. I agreed to come around and hang out with her, but she said she would have to leave to run an errand at some point. She told me she'd only be gone for about half an hour. She asked if I could keep an eye on her youngest child who was asleep while she quickly went out to take care of something. I was a bit hesitant, but I agreed reluctantly. The other 2 kids were already staying at our parents' place for the weekend, so I understood that she probably wanted some time to herself to handle the errand. It was rare for her to get even half an hour of free time, given how busy she usually was with the kids. She promised it would be. I come over, we chat and catch up and watch a movie. It's really pleasant until she says she has to leave for that errand and leaves me instructions on what to do in case the kid wakes up, but says to just call her because she's only around the corner. I'm really on edge about it because I struggle a lot with really bad anxiety and panic disorder, which I'm currently in therapy and experimenting with meds to manage. But truthfully, we haven't discovered any method that truly works for me to handle looking after kids for an extended period. She's well aware of this and knows that I would really struggle and potentially panic if I had to care for a child for longer than the time she initially promised. Mentally, I'm just not in the right place to handle situations like a crying child, for instance. So, the half hour she mentioned passes, and she hasn't returned. Another 15 minutes go by, making it 45 minutes in total. I start to worry and decide to give her a call to check if everything's all right and when she plans to be back. After multiple rings, she finally picks up the phone. She said something came up and she'd be another hour, maybe an hour and 15. I basically lost my shit and say, if she's not back in 15 minutes, then I'm leaving. She said I wouldn't do that, and to please just stay there, and hung up. At this point, I'm on the verge of having a panic attack, so do my breathing exercises, when her husband leave a message when he does not. So text him about the situation as well, and also text my mom and leave about 15 minutes, as I said. Apparently, my sister didn't come home for another 2 hours, and when she did, her husband was with the child, and they are both fuming. He got my message 15 minutes after I left, so 30 minutes after I sent it. Now both of them are giving me the silent treatment, accusing me of putting the child's life in danger. I can't help but feel that staying there longer might have made things worse. After all, the kids were fast asleep throughout, and if I had a panic attack, it might have startled the little one awake to see me in a state of disarray. Your sister shouldn't have left her kid with someone incapable of taking care of a kid. She can get charged with abandonment. You left a 4-year-old alone, putting his life in danger, and also possibly risking legal trouble. How far away do your parents live? Could you not have called them cold? Any local friends called the damn cops? Why do you don't leave a 4-year-old by themselves in the house? Anything could happen. I hope you never have kids.